Hey, what's up YouTube? Today we're going to be replacing the rear tube on our electric bicycle company Model C. This thing is quite the beast, but we do have a rear flat. So we got to replace that. First time for me. It's going to be first time for you watching me, and I'm going to show you how to do that. We'll put a new tube in there. Keep the tire as is. There's a little bit of a trick, not to this side, but to this other side here, where you see you've got the power coming in from the battery up here. The first thing we want to do before we disconnect any kind of electric going to that rear hub is to turn power off and just flicking that switch. You want the indentation toward you. Now, I highly recommend something like this, which is a bike stand from Park Tool, and it is going to make your life a whole lot easier to work on your bike, especially something that's heavy. Get it up there, and then you have no issues working on it. At the rear, you'll notice a cap covering this nut on the left side. Easy, just take that off. But on the right-hand side, that same cap has the power cable going right into it, into that part of the axle to go to power this hub. So what do we do here? That's the big question. So if you follow this wire up along the frame, you'll see a connection right here. So the good news is we can disconnect that wire, leave it attached to the hub, and not really have to worry about bothering with this piece other than just loosening that nut. When you come over to the left side, you can get a peek of that connector, kind of a better look at it, and you can see it's held on there by a cable tie. But the good news is that the part that's being held by the cable tie is the part that will stay connected to the bike. This little piece comes out. You can literally just pull that out. So right here is the other cable tie. And you don't actually need to cut it. It's got a little lip on it, and it just went flying over there on the ground. Disconnect this cable now. Tell you what, it's not easy. Take the watch off. There we go. You got a lot of pins on there, so it's a lot to disconnect. But that's it. Now that wire is free. I highly recommend that you start on this side, on the right side. You can kind of slip the cap off just enough to get access to that nut, but you'll need to use an open-ended wrench like this, and specifically an 18mm. And since this is kind of the hardest side compared to the other side, we'll want to loosen this side up first, and then we'll have more control over the other side as we're loosening that. So you know that side is loose. And then we come over to this side, but now you don't have to use the open-ended part. You can get a better grip on it by using that end, and then get a grip on it as you're loosening this up. There you go, you can hand loosen it, and at that point, this wheel will want to free itself out of the hub. Just make sure it's completely loose before you slide that out. Now she's a bit tricky because she's caught on something. Just take this whole nut off, completely off, so you can see what's going on. And with this side, you could run that plastic cover up the end. And what I think is happening here is we've got to loosen this nut right here that's pushing up against the frame. This 17mm will work to loosen that up. And it's really loose, so what they're doing is just putting a light pressure against this frame to really tighten up. There you go. So again, you just want to loosen this up enough and pay attention to whether or not it's pushing the frame out or not, because that'll tell you if you're tightening it against the frame or if you're loosening it, because you need to loosen it enough to drop the wheel out. And at this point, you can disconnect the chain and around that wire, and the whole wheel just drops out at that point. Here comes the fun part, putting the new tube back underneath this tire. You don't have to remove the entire tire. You can just bring one half of the sidewall over the rim, and then we can slide the old tube out and then put a new one back in. And now I'm going to show you how to do that. But first up, remove this cap here. Grab yourself a plastic tire lever, because you don't want to scratch your rim. And if you're just replacing the tire and your tube underneath is fine, you don't want to puncture your tube, and you will with a metal tire lever. So just use that to start popping the sidewall over the rim, something like that. And just work that around all the way. And so now our tire is free, and it's kind of half, you can see it's kind of half on that rim. And that's fine, because what we're going to do is push out this valve stem here, make sure that's free, and then we're going to pull that tube all the way out. And that's it, we got our brand new tube here. We're going to put that in. Where you have the tire hanging out over the edge, that's where you want to be able to run your tube, inside that. So find the hole in the rim where you can put your valve stem. Get that in there first, because that's your centering point. So we got that in there, and you can put your little cap on there to make sure it stays seated. And then run with the tire over the rim edge. Run that tube inside, up and inside, just like this. It's a bit easier if you have it laid down on the ground, but I've got it like this so I can show you exactly what I'm doing. And be gentle with your rim on the ground, because you will mar it. All right, so something like that. You can start bringing in the tire sidewall back over the rim. These are awesome rims, by the way. They did a beautiful job on the powder coating. And so here is our last bit we got to get. And it gets super tight, but you just got to massage that over the edge, just like that. I want to show you this part close up, because this is where it gets tricky. If this is right here, this is the top of your wheel when you're putting it back, you want this little index washer. By the way, you've got another washer in between there. Okay. You want this index washer right here to be face up. And this is on the left side. On the right side, you want the same thing. You want this piece right here to be facing up along with the other side. So both of those are facing up, because what happens is that locks it into the groove that you have. See the two notches on each side? That gets locked, and I'll just pull one off so you understand this. This little notch right there goes right in, and that locks the hub orientation. This is where it gets to be a little bit tricky, putting it back in, because you got the chain to worry about, and you have those notches that you have to worry about as well, but it is doable, and you just need to take your time and have some patience. But because that chain is so tight, I'm actually going to see if I can mount the chain part first. Okay, it's on there. And then we can go ahead and mount this in the axle. You've got to really push this frame, kind of open it up a little bit to get everything, to get that notch to line up on both sides. There you go. You use some leverage on the end of this nut here to work that up. If you see on this side, I can start to put that nut back on, and same thing on this side. I can tighten it down a little bit. It's not going to hold it per se, but you can at least get it tightened a little bit to get that axle to stay in place while you tighten everything else up. Now, you can tighten this little nut on the inside again with not too much force. And we're covering the witness marks from when we had it on there first. And it's a bit easier to see over here if I were to loosen this one up a little bit. You'd be able to see the witness marks underneath. See, the whole nut tightened down, scrapes that paint right off. And so that's what we're matching that with when we go to install that back on. You can't really torque the side that has the wire, but I would get that pretty tight. And the same on the outside here, you know, same deal. I would get that pretty tight because you don't want that falling off. You can put this cap back on this side after everything's been tightened down. Again, make sure it's all snugged up. That's really good. And then put that cap on. And now we're going to want to run this wire back the way it came and make the connection. There are two arrows, one on the female end and one right here on the male end. And you're going to want to match those arrows when you make that connection. Make sure the connection is nice and tight, and it's really important to match those arrows because you don't want to push those two together without having those arrows matching. So that's on. Then you could take that leftover clip that we had that popped off before and just put that right back on. That just literally snaps into place. Put the cap on the other side too. That's it. And get some air back in our tire. If you're having trouble getting a seat on that valve stem because it keeps pushing itself back underneath that, you know, trying to get underneath that rim, just push on the opposite side here on the tire and you'll get that valve stem to stay out while you're pushing up against it. The recommended tire pressure for the tire goes all the way to 65. 60 is plenty. And don't forget, there's a lot of weight on the rear end of this bike with the battery. The higher pressure that you put it at, the less chance you're going to have something like a pinch flat out on the road, and you really don't want to be doing this out on the road. All right, 60. Cap back on the valve stem. We'll flick that back switch to on. You heard the little chirp. Hold down this power button. Fires right up. Half battery charge, but you know what? That is plenty to see if she works. Moment of truth here, YouTube. Assist level 5, because you got to go max speed. And here we go. Let's see. Oh yeah! That's it, YouTube. Thanks for watching. Hope this video helped you out.